Hi, I'm Lisa at the Brattleboro Food Co-op, and today we are going to be making Chana dal, which is a delicious vegetarian or vegan dish from India. We are using a recipe inspired by the work of Anyupi Sangha, whose cookbooks I've been reading for years, and so this is kind of my mashup of a few different recipes that she's created. So I highly recommend that you check out Anyupi's work. We are going to start by blending together all of these produce items. So we have an onion. All we need to do is quarter it, remove the stems, remove the skin, of course. And it's amazing. I have never had a Vitamix. You know, fancy blenders, fancy food processors are all great, but I've never had a Vitamix, and I found that my blender can totally handle this job. So if you have just any sort of standard blender, it should be able to do this. And if it has trouble, see if maybe you need a new blender blade. The average blender can handle this all. So I'm just going to slice this core out of the tomato. And I like to put the tomato in first because I know it will really add a lot of liquid to the operation. So here we go. And then that tomato is from Old Athens Farm in Putney, Vermont. This pepper is from Deep Meadow Farm in Ascutney, Vermont. This is called a poblano pepper, and it's the most wonderful pepper. It adds a little bit of heat, but really not much, and they're nice and big. So it's a great way to add some mild heat to any dish, and you don't have the guessing game of how many jalapenos do I put in. You just know it's gonna be chill. Okay, and the quartered onion, just throw in there. Now we need about the equivalent of 2 tablespoons of ginger. Some recipes measure that in inches, but it's tricky because some pieces of ginger are a lot fatter than others. So this is a pretty thick one. I think that I'm gonna just put this whole thing right in. I've heard that you can also peel ginger with a spoon. But I'm always too impatient. But if you have kids helping you on this project, if you have kind of a sharpish soup spoon, they can use that to scrape the peel off the ginger. Okay, just to help it along, I'm gonna quarter this piece. Whoop, whoop. Okay. Believe it or not, we're already about 2/3 of the way done with our recipe. Okay, just take the ends off the garlic. And I'm gonna crush each garlic so it's easier to peel with the heel of my hand on the knife. Sorry about all my produce remains, kind of messy on my cutting board. All right. So in goes the garlic. Just one more. So for this recipe, we can use either soaked chickpeas that have been soaked overnight, or you can sprout them. And sprouting chickpeas is really simple. All that you do is you soak them and then drain them, and then every 12 hours water them. Just like give them a little drink and then drain them again. And then you will see tails. Okay, we have spices right here. So we're going to put in a tablespoon each of coriander and ground cumin and the cumin seeds I'm going to save aside so they don't get ground up. Garam masala. And then we need just a half teaspoon of turmeric. A little goes a long way, so it's not bitter. And then a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne, which is optional. If you have heat haters in your house, definitely don't put in the cayenne. And then 1½ teaspoons of salt. All right, we're gonna just blend this up and then I'll be back to see you in a moment. We have our blended up Chana dal mixture, and this is just like a raw smoothie version of the delicious sauce that you get when you eat out at an Indian restaurant, and it really smells great. And here we have some chickpeas. So these chickpeas I actually started soaking 24 hours ago. I soaked them for all day long. I put them on in the morning, and then in the evening I drained them into this little basket. And then they were able to just rest overnight, and that was enough time for some of them to actually sprout. You can see this one has a white tail tip sticking out. So germination really changes the nutrient composition of grains, beans, and seeds. Oftentimes I'll let chickpeas sprout even longer until they all have like 1/4 inch tails, but then they kind of fall apart in the Chana Masala. So I didn't sprout these as long. But as you can see, it's a super simple process to sprout chickpeas. It just takes 24 hours, 12 soaking, 12 drained, and then you're ready to go. This helps reduce toxins and it helps improve nutrient content. It releases magnesium, calcium, and zinc. All 3 of those get bound up in something called phytic acid, which is the plant's protection against predation, against us coming to eat them. And so when the phytic acid is neutralized by the sprouting process, then the components of that phytic acid, calcium, magnesium, and zinc, become available for our bodies to use. So even if we just germinate the tiniest bit, it makes a whole chemical difference in the food that we're eating. And it's really nice. It's a nice way to connect to the food that you're making. And you can really have kind of more awareness of what's going on. I like to just kind of look at the beans. This one looks a little bit greenish. So even though it's sprouted, I'm just gonna toss that one. Just take a nice look at all of them. These are the kind of things that we can do as home cooks. We can just look at all the beans before they go in the can and just like see, like, does this look good? It's so different from buying pre-cooked chickpeas, and so much more fun if you ask me. So I'm going to dump these in the crock pot, and I will add the tasty, tasty sauce. There we go. Oh my goodness, this is going to be delicious. Can't wait for you all to try this. So, put this to the side, and I'm going to add our cumin seeds now. So I didn't want them to get blended up in the blender. Just a tablespoon of them, and 2 tablespoons of coconut oil or ghee. Ghee would be much more traditional, but I want this to be edible by our vegans in our community. So I'm using coconut oil. All right, and the last thing is we just need 4 cups of water. So I'll just pour this in. So the chickpeas really need a high temperature to cook. Make sure that when your crock pot is high, that it's boiling. If your crock pot doesn't boil on high, and you know this about it, I would definitely boil the water before you put it all together. And I would probably instead recommend cooking on a stovetop on low rather than using your crock pot. It's really important that beans are totally thoroughly cooked for our health. So I like to cook this about 6 or 8 hours until the chickpeas are really soft. I like there to be plenty of sauce left. Every crock pot is different. So if you come back and all you see is chickpeas and then kind of like little bits of tomato and spice, why don't you add some water just so that it's nice and saucy when your family enjoys it. I really prefer to serve this over basmati rice. I hope that you really love it at home, and thank you so much for watching. Hello, here we are demoing the Chana Masala that we made. So this is what it looks like when it's all done. And I just had a little 7-year-old girl try it, and once she tasted it, she said, I definitely want the recipe. So anyway, I hope that you guys have fun making this at home with your kids.